The fun in it for the Phoenix Suns would be playing in the postseason.
I agree.
Mitch. We don't know if that's going to happen right now. The Suns are a Grayson Allen buzzer tying shot at the buzzer. There we go. To force overtime to get a win over the Utah Jazz. If that didn't happen, they'd be on a 7-game losing streak right now. They're 26-28. Coming out of the All-Star break, they're 11th in the standings. Ahead of them are the Kings and the Warriors, who are 28-27. Mavericks are 30-26, and you've got the Wolves, Clippers, Lakers, Rockets. The Rockets have lost 7 of their last 9, so they're worth mentioning here for a bit. But I'll have a story tomorrow on ArizonaSports.com presented by Y-Refi that goes over the trending states of these teams. The Suns certainly trending down, so are the Rockets. Teams like the Warriors are trending up. We'll see how it plays out over the next couple of weeks to let us know, like, okay, are the Suns going to be able to get to 7? Can they get to 5? Or are they just going to be fighting for this 9 to 10 line? From a very base and fundamental level, Mitch, what needs to happen in order for that to be the reality, where they are able to rise above this 10-11 line and definitively put themselves in the postseason?
So the base and fundamental question will get a base and fundamental answer, but we'll obviously go deeper into it. They need to win games. That seems to be like
good start.
That seems to be the basis of everything, right?
Yeah.
They're 26-28, so they're 2 games under 500. They're a game and a half back of the next closest team that would get them into the play-in conversation. But in general, they need to win games. 3 wins out of their last 10. As you mentioned, a Grayson Allen, Rex Chapman lookalike buzzer shot to send it to overtime is the difference between a 7-game losing streak and a 3-game losing streak with a fun win, and then another 3-game losing streak. In general, they just need to play clean basketball, which is something that they've struggled to do for most of the year. So how am I supposed to believe that they're all of a sudden going to look clean now? But in general, that seems to be the biggest thing that is ailing this team, is just they're not playing cleanly. And no matter the level of star talent that you may have on your team, if you don't take care of the basketball on a possession in, possession out, you are more often than not going to lose games. And we've seen they have lost more games than they have won, which is crazy because we keep looking back at the turnover percentage. We keep looking back at the turnover average, and they're above average in terms of how they're doing with that. And yet it seems like the turnovers are the biggest reason for why they're losing as many games as they are.
Where I got to start is health. I like to keep it as fundamental as possible. It starts with health for me. Bradley Beal has missed 35% of his potential games he could have played for the Phoenix Suns so far. You can look at that and say, like, well, what did you expect? He was in Washington where this happened. He played 80% of the possible games in Washington. He wasn't really as injury-riddled as you thought. It was something that really came on the last couple of years of his career.
Yeah.
They need him because you're looking out there, you're like, why is Ty Washington playing? Brad's hurt. Why is Colin Gillespie? Brad's hurt. Like, you build a roster like this, you have a guy making $50+ million who is on his 8th different gap in not playing this year. Like, if you look at just like even a 1-game absence, this is the 8th time where there's been a gap in his play because of injury. That's crazy. We're 54 games and it's happened 8 times already over certain variables of like whether it was a game, 8 games, 9 games, whatever. You look at Devin Booker as the other example of this. Played 20-something straight games, missed 5, played 20-something straight games, and missed 1 here coming out of the break. And then, of course, like KD is the big one for me, where if like he misses like 8 or 9 games, like they are definitively in the play-in and like better hope that they're still in the play-in there. Like they cannot afford to miss him for a week or 2, 3 weeks, whatever it would be. Booker sort of in the same way. They've got to defend as well. Mitch, their defense is getting worse by the month. And that was a weird subplot of last year. Is that statistically they were getting better by the month defensively under Frank Vogel. Like he was doing that job. They are getting worse by the month right now. Defensively, they have dropped to 27th in defense on Clean the Glasses database, which excludes garbage time. If you want to include garbage time, great. That's awesome. They're tied for 24th in defensive rating on NBA.com. They are not going to be an offense that is ranked like 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 5th, even over like a 2 to 3 week span. I don't think they're capable of that level of consistency offensively. What they can do is get much better defensively. Like they have the personnel. Yes, they are not a group that you look at on paper and said is going to be a good defensive team, but could they be meh? Could they be like 16th, 17th, 18th? Yes, remember what they did at the start of the year? The reason why you and I had so much optimism about the start of the year was not because they were 8-1 or 9-2, not because Kevin Durant was taking over in crunch time. It's because they were playing good enough defense to get to those points in games. That defense has been MIA, nowhere to be seen.
And it was spurred by one of their best players, too. Like, the reason that the defense was so successful is because Kevin Durant was kind of the linchpin, so to speak, of the successes of the defense.
We were like, is he going to make all defense?
I know.
We were talking about that.
We were talking about that in spite of all of the weird ways that they were winning games, but also the defense was playing super duper well. And that's what matters most to me, is that if you're going to have a defensive anchor of your team, it definitely helps when it's one of your best players, right? Don't get me wrong. Ryan Dunn, we count on him for his defense when it comes to the Suns. Royce O'Neal, same thing. Bradley Beal, sneakily, has had some really good defensive stretches when he's been on the floor. At the same time, there are moments, and we've seen them, where Kevin Durant is the best defensive player on the floor for the Suns, and then in the same game, he is the worst defensive player on the floor for the Suns. And there needs to be some sort of either marrying of the two to have legitimate, solid defensive player on possession in, possession out, or it just needs to be more of the top end. Because what's killing them right now is the fact that a lot more of the bottom end seems to be creeping in on some of these possessions as of late.
I've been asking for this all year, and I continue to not get it. You know what I would love this Thursday when they're in, not San Antonio, but they're at the University of Texas's facilities to honor Kevin Durant in another very cool way. I would love to see Devin Booker as they're like getting on the floor. Just be like, look at Ryan or Brad or whoever's starting and just be like, or Royce, and be like, I got De'Aaron. Don't worry about it. I don't care what the coaches say. I don't care what the matchups were, what Budenholzer is dictating. Just, I would love to see Devin Booker be the type of guy where he improved in the postseason, especially to such an extent over that insane 13-game run, included some phenomenal defense by him to the point where I was like, I can't sit here and rule out an all-defense nod for him at some point in his career. Like, that's how good he was defensively. I have not seen that guy pretty much anywhere this year. Again, like you mentioned with Durant, but to a far lesser extent. There have been flashes from him where you're like, oh yeah, that's the Devin Booker where you could post clips of him defending at a super high level. Kevin has brought that more consistently. The lows have been there as well, but the highs just haven't been there from Book as they have been with Kevin. And then Brad has had the highest highs out of all of them more consistently with his energy on defense, but the lows have been there too, like him just like falling asleep on a backdoor cut. Like that type of thing is the stuff that they do. The start of this break is imperative, Mitch, to go back to like what needs to happen. I think they need to, at minimum, win 4 of their first 6 games to be in a position where like we're not like, oh my gosh, are they just not even going to be in the play-in? They go to Austin, as you mentioned, on Thursday. Then they go to Chicago on Saturday, go up north to Toronto on Sunday. Toronto, one of the worst teams in the league. Chicago, not quite one of the worst teams in the league, but they sold high on Zach LaVine.
Right.
So they are certainly one of the least talented teams in the league. Then they go to Memphis on Tuesday before a home back-to-back against New Orleans. You got to win at least 4 of those games. It seems like a high, tall order, even with that lack of quality of competition, for them to win 4 out of 6 with how they're playing right now. But right after that, Minnesota, Clippers, Denver, Dallas, Memphis, Houston, Sacramento, Lakers. Only 3 of those games are at home.
And all of those are teams that are ahead of you right now.
Yeah, and
you have to beat those.
And
teams.
that's the breaking point I think we talked about 2 months ago, I want to say, is March 16th, you go to LA to play the Lakers. When that game's over, where are you at in the standings? So at that point is when we'll know, okay, are we talking about just getting 10? Are we talking about the difference between 9 and 10? Are we talking about the difference between 7 and 8? Are we talking about, like, can they get to 6? We will definitively know by then. And I think the precursor to that is the end of February for sure.
It's going to be a fun month. I can't wait.